It was a beautiful summer day, and I stood there watching my daughter in her elegant white dress, the fabric shimmering against the golden sunlight. She floated down the aisle like a vision, each step filled with joy, excitement, and a little bit of nervousness. My heart swelled with pride as the smiles of our friends and family surrounded us, but beneath that facade of happiness, a storm was brewing. As she reached my side, her wide eyes locked onto mine, filled with an urgency that immediately set off alarm bells in my chest. "Mom, promise you'll keep my secret," she whispered, her voice barely above the sound of the music that enveloped us. The world around me began to fade, the laughter and cheers muffling into a distant hum as I felt an icy grip tighten around my heart. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" I managed to stammer, my heart racing as confusion mixed with dread. She took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling rapidly while her eyes darted around us, as if afraid someone might overhear this crucial confession. "I'm pregnant," she confessed, her words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. "But Rob doesn't know, and I don't want to ruin our day." At that moment, the radiant sunshine seemed to dim and shadows enveloped my thoughts, twisting the happiness I had felt just moments before into despair. I felt my stomach drop, the news crashing into me like a tidal wave, pulling me under into an abyss of overwhelming emotions. The laughter and applause around us became distant echoes, the reality of her words burning into my mind. My daughter was pregnant, and the man who stood before her, her fiancé, my future son-in-law, had no clue. How could this be happening on such a monumental day? I could feel my body go rigid, frozen like ice, as emotions fought for dominance. Pride wrestled with panic, anger clawed its way to the surface, and an overwhelming sorrow threatened to swallow me whole. All I wanted to do was pull her close, hold her, tell her everything would be okay, but the enormity of her secret left me stranded. The vibrant colors of the day and the sounds of joy faded into a stark black and white, creating an unbelievable chasm between us. My mouth opened, desperate for words, words of love, comfort, guidance, but nothing coherent came out as I felt the weight of 1,000 fears crash around me. All the dreams I had for my daughter, the perfect life I hoped she would have, all crumbled away in that single moment. Her whispered words were a betrayal not just to herself but to everyone. To her fiancé, whose face was lit with innocent bliss. How could she keep this from him, from us? Just as I opened my mouth to respond, to grasp at the swirling chaos of thoughts and emotions, the moment shattered into pieces. I looked up and saw him approaching us, her fiancé, stroking his mother's arm as they walked closer. He seemed so blissfully ignorant, such a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling in my heart. My mind raced and my breath caught. The sight of him, so happy and proud, felt like a knife twisting deeper into my gut. "Hey babe," he said, looking at my daughter with that infectious smile, completely unaware of the weight we both carried. "You look absolutely beautiful." My daughter's face lit up, her previous nervousness vanishing in an instant as she turned to him, her demeanor transforming from tense to ecstatic, and that shift was like salt poured into my already open wound. What would he think if he knew the truth? What would this day look like when it was stripped of its layers of joy? The music around us swelled, and I felt the world pulling at the seams, unraveling in front of me. A moment that was meant to signify a union, the start of a lifelong journey paved with love and happiness, was now threatening to drown us all in betrayal. "Look at you both," he said, now scanning the faces of everyone gathered, the relatives and friends who wouldn't know the truth until it was too late. Rob's mother beamed, her eyes sparkling with delight. How could I ever tell her the secret looming over this special occasion? How could I ruin everything? "You two are perfect for each other," his mother declared, oblivious, and in that moment I felt myself shrink. It was so unfair. My daughter was harboring a secret that could shatter this beautiful illusion, and here he was, blissfully unaware, tying his dreams to someone whose path was about to veer sharply away from the one everyone imagined. My husband's gaze flicked between the two of us, and I could feel the tension building, a thick, heavy cloud of uncertainty enveloping the air between us. He glanced at me, a knowing look hiding behind his usually calm demeanor, like he sensed there was something deeply wrong. For a brief moment, I considered confiding in him, letting him in on this heavy secret. But what could he do? We were standing amidst family, friends, and love, the atmosphere charged with joy. I was trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, watching as my daughter prepared to embark on a path that was now murkier than I could ever have imagined. I knew in my heart that if the truth came out, so much more would be at stake than just Lily's hidden pregnancy. It was the entire web of our family, the fabric that held us together, and the image we had so carefully woven over the years. It felt like my daughter was giving in to selfishness at the most inopportune time, robbing everyone of the joy that was meant to be. "Mom," her voice broke through my thoughts, sharp yet tinged with concern. "Are you okay?" Looking into her innocent eyes, I realized I needed to mask my own turmoil. I would not betray her trust, not here, not now. As her smile melted back into place, I knew I had to play this game of pretense. I nodded despite the knot tightening in my chest. I am, sweetheart, I lied, forcing the words past the storming chaos of emotions inside of me. You look absolutely stunning. My voice trembled only slightly, just enough for her to notice, but she brushed it off, searching the crowd as if to find solace in their eyes. Thanks, Mom, she whispered, the joy in her voice all but a thin veneer over the raw edge of fear. It's just, I had to tell you, I felt like you needed to know. The weight of her confession crashed onto me again, threatening to splinter my resolve. She was scared, I realized. The pressure of this secret was crushing her, and in turn crushing me. As the sweet notes of the wedding march filled the air, I looked around. I saw proud faces smiling back, unaware of the impending disaster coiled just beneath the surface. Our whole family was here, looking at us with love, joy, and a sprinkling of envy that often accompanies such moments. I could feel the bruising pressure of expectation surrounding us, pressing down harder with every second that ticked by as Rob's innocent laugh broke through the tension. Are you ready? He asked, that bright smile on his face shining with hope. If only he knew the truth that lurked just beneath his happiness. Always, my daughter responded, but I saw those eyes flicker for a moment, her confidence wavering. Just remember, she is happy, I thought, more for myself than for her. As I held my breath, the moment felt heavy, saturated with impending doom. The wedding would commence, but the truth churned in my stomach like a dark cloud threatening to burst. I felt small and insignificant. What if she was afraid? My mind screamed. There was so much at stake: her future, her relationship, our family. I wanted to scream, to shake her and say, "What are you doing? You are ruining everything." But I wouldn't, not here, in front of everyone. I forced my face into a smile, masking the fear that clawed at my throat. The ceremony began, and the officiant's voice rang out in joyful cadence. As vows were exchanged and tears flowed from the corners of proud eyes, I felt the weight of betrayal strangle me silently, each word punctuating my existence. What would happen when the audience found out? How would I explain my daughter's secret to the very family members who had looked to her, expecting a fairy tale? The terror of being seen as a family that had crumbled washed over me, threatening to drown me in despair. And then I caught her gaze again, my daughter, lost in that moment of bliss, and I wanted so desperately to warn her that happiness could be fragile, until the truth pierced through like shattered glass. It echoed around us, and I wondered which would break first, the family we had built or the dreams she was forging anew. Her hands shook slightly as she gripped Rob's, and I wished more than anything that I could crawl inside her heart and reassure her that she was not alone. But how could I? My own heart pounded, and in that critical moment I understood. If she chose to protect her secret today, then tomorrow we might all face the inevitable explosion of truth, an implosion of our family's happiness. I could only stand silently, praying for strength, as each vow reverberated in my ears. Then, just when I thought I might break under the pressure of it all, I remembered the one power I had left: my voice. And as the vows echoed, I saw a divide forming, an undeniable separation between my daughter's need to hide and my own desire to scream out the truth. Right before I could gather my shattering thoughts into something coherent, the ceremony reached a crescendo as they exchanged rings, a moment sealed in time, pure and innocent of the darkness that circled us. The officiant's voice rang, "You may kiss the bride." And as his lips brushed against my daughter's, I was left standing there, grappling with the reality that our lives were positioned on a precarious precipice. I would keep her secret for now, but in my heart a storm brewed, a promise that would not go unanswered. I would do everything to protect her, but I would also find a way to ensure the truth would rise eventually. The sun shone brightly, cruelly illuminating the complex emotions of the day, a reminder that secrets hidden seemed so beautiful until the moment they had to be revealed. My heart felt heavy, the weight of uncertainty tightening its grip, and just as the applause erupted, signaling the celebration of their love, another part of me resonated within a dark excitement brewing for the day I would finally unleash the truth, and the way it would shake our family to its very core. Little did they all know that the real story had only just begun to unfold. I stood in the kitchen, my fingers idly twirling a fork in the spaghetti dish, steam rising in gentle spirals, filling the room with the rich aroma of marinara sauce. My husband sat across the table, bantering back and forth with our son, his laughter echoing warmly around the cozy dining room. The dim light cast a soft golden hue over everything, creating an inviting atmosphere, yet my heart felt chillingly distant. I watched as my husband animatedly told a hilarious story about his day at work, leaning back in his chair, a mischievous sparkle lighting up his eyes. "No more kids for us," he quipped, a playful smirk etched on his lips, and at that moment the world slipped out of focus. It felt as if the room had plunged into a deep, freezing silence, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. My heart raced, pounding violently against my rib cage as I felt a chill cascading down my spine like icy fingers. It was a moment that had traversed my mind relentlessly, a dark shadow lurking beneath the surface of seemingly innocent banter. Before Jake, my son, there had been another child, my daughter, a sweet little girl named Emily, who had somehow woven herself into the very fabric of my being. She had been with us for only 3 precious years, but those years were etched into my soul with a pain that refused to fade. Suddenly, the simple act of sharing dinner turned into a grating reminder of haunting memories, and I felt like I was being pulled underwater, gasping for air yet unable to breathe. The laughter of my husband seemed to take on a mocking tone, reverberating cruelly within me, reminding me of what I had lost. No more kids. He said again, this time laughter cut short by the violent twist in my gut. He did not know, could not know, the secret I had buried deep within me. A secret intertwined with betrayal and regret, emotions that clawed at me with every word he spoke. As I struggled to keep my composure, I felt the heat rise within me, a mix of anger and heartache that I could no longer contain. The pasta that I had just twirled on my fork suddenly lodged in my throat, choking me as tears blurred my vision. The laughter ceased, the fork dropped from my fingers with a clatter that echoed like thunder in the uncanny silence of the room. I could feel the hot, prickling sensation of tears threatening to spill over as those memories, buried for so long, came rushing to the forefront of my mind. Poor little Emily, with her bright, innocent eyes and carefree laughter. The tiny shoes I meticulously arranged by the door faded into a fog of grief, replaced by the memories of that awful day, the screams, the chaos, and ultimately, the emptiness that took her away from me. I wheezed, choking on the emotions that threatened to drown me, my vision swaying, the darkness painting over the edges, everything feeling surreal and out of reach. My husband whipped his head in my direction, the playful twinkle vanishing from his eyes, replaced by concern that felt like daggers piercing through my heart. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice shifting from jovial to urgent as he pushed himself away from the table. I could see the worry crinkling the corners of his brow. "What is it?" My son stared at me, his wide, innocent eyes flicking between my husband and me, confusion scribbled all over his youthful face. The room buzzed with a tension thick enough to cut, the laughter replaced by an awkward silence, the clinking of forks and the swish of spaghetti being just ghostly memories. I was a storm trapped in a glass jar, ready to shatter against the anguish that welled inside. My throat felt thick, heavy with unspoken words, and as my husband leaned toward me, his concern turned to confusion, I sensed a flicker of impatience within him, a reminder of the cold conversations we had barely navigated. "What is going on?" he pressed gently, though the edge woven through his voice made it clear this was an unwelcome disruption to our cozy evening. I sat there drowning in the weight of his gaze, the warmth of the dinner table morphing into the icy grip of an unforgiving truth. I wanted to tell him to unearth the shadows that had followed me silently, the memories that haunted me. I wanted to confess my agony, the betrayal of circumstances that had left me broken and isolated. But the words clung to my throat like stones, refusing to be set free. Would he even understand? Would he mock my pain as he had earlier mocked the idea of expanding our family? My lips trembled and I shook my head, but the gesture felt futile, a tiny leaf in a booming tempest. My son's brow knitted in confusion, the uncertainty in his eyes reflecting my internal chaos. And for a brief moment, I hated the lightheartedness that had filled our home merely moments earlier. Why did he have to joke about family when shadows loomed, when grave reminders threatened to tear open stitched wounds? If only he could see the destruction left in the wake of that loss, if only he knew how much Emily's absence stung and seared, an unhealable wound compounded by silence. "I cannot breathe," I finally whispered, the confession a fragile release that hung like an echo in the stillness. My husband's expression shifted gradually, the playful veneer bustling away, revealing concern mixed with a dash of frustration. "What do you mean you cannot breathe? It was just a joke. I did not mean anything by it." The dismissal slid off his tongue too easily, and that contributed to my fury bubbling over like a boiling pot. I could feel my heart racing, and a familiar anger burned bright in the chords of my soul. "You do not know what you're playing with. You never think about how your jokes can cut." I snapped, the words rolling out of my mouth like an avalanche past the brick wall I had built around my heart. He blinked, caught off guard as if the air had been sucked from the room. "What are you talking about? You are overreacting." My son looked between us, bewildered as the tension thickened and the air seemed to shimmer, insistent and heavy with the weight of unspoken words. "I am not overreacting. You have no idea how those words struck a nerve. How can you joke about family when I lost Emily? How can you sit there and laugh, pretending like the past does not bleed into the present?" The voice I employed lost its softness and turned sharp, almost foreign to my own ears. The room transformed under the intensity of my words, electric and charged, every emotion that had simmered below the surface boiling over violently, manifesting into a tempest I had no control over. He flinched slightly, the worry creeping back into his eyes, now tinged with caution as he processed my confession. "You could have just said something instead of choking like that," he shot back defensively, but I could see the cracks forming in his composed facade, the hurt splintering within as he grappled with the stranger I had become in that moment. Do not act like you are the victim here. You made a joke that stemmed from ignorance and insensitivity. You have never had to face losing a child. The last word escaped me in a choked whisper, heavy with the weight of effects. Silence enveloped us again, thick and suffocating, a moment that seemed to stretch endlessly. My husband stared at me, his expression caught between disbelief and horror as if he had been slammed against a reality he never expected to confront. I never meant to hurt you, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, the accusation hanging like fog between us, unspoken but palpable. I could feel the sparks of resentment flashing between us, sharp and ugly. It terrified me. This was not what I had envisioned for our evenings, moments of shared laughter and buoyancy, leavening the history we carried together. Instead, here we were, circling around the pain like moths attracted to a flame, warily glancing at the possibility of being burned. My son, the innocent bystander in this uncomfortable revelation, sat speechless, the confusion morphing into fear as he absorbed the electricity that charged the air around us. "What is happening?" he finally asked, his youthful voice trembling with a blend of curiosity and trepidation. I froze, a sudden realization dawning on me. I was not merely revisiting my grief. I had dragged my son along with me into a chasm that mirrored my despair. My heart dropped, remorse settling in the pit of my stomach. In my attempt to unveil my hurt, I had inadvertently cast a shadow over the lighthearted banter we usually shared during dinner. My voice trembled as I turned back to my son. "I am sorry, sweetie. I did not mean to scare you. It is just, I lost someone very special a long time ago and it still hurts sometimes." The sincerity of my admission softened the storm raging within me, the tension crackling around us beginning to dissipate though it lingered just beneath the surface. Jake's face scrunched as he processed my words, the innocent vulnerability of a child trying to understand complex behavior and emotions written all over him. "Is that why you choked? Because of Emily?" "Yes, my dear. When your father joked, it reminded me of how much I miss her, and it hit me harder than I expected," I confessed, tasting the bittersweet truth of my longing. With careful deliberation, I brought my gaze back to my husband, who now appeared at a loss, his hands shaking slightly as he leaned against the table. "Evelyn," he began hesitantly, but I could see that shred of fear creeping in again, the essence of vulnerability clashing against every instinct to suspend the conversation. Perhaps he did not want to confront the uncomfortable feeling bubbling between us. Perhaps, like every other time, he would prefer to tuck emotions away, to preserve the false sense of ease we had built over the years. My heart ached at the realization, and my tears threatened to spill over again, but this time I held them back, crafted a semblance of strength, and resolved to face what had arisen. "You cannot joke about our family like that anymore. It may seem like lighthearted banter to you, but for me, it is a painful reminder of a child whom I lost. It is an injustice that still lingers." The words escaped me like racehorses breaking free from a stable, raw and laced with fervent emotion. The weight of my confession lingered in the air, painting it thick with a sense of impending reckoning. The misalignment of our perspectives had unveiled a rift that we had carefully skirted around for too long. At that moment, he winced, visible emotions swirling on his face, etched with the urgency to formulate a response yet caught in the melee of regret and sorrow left by the tremors of conflict. Then, a glimmer of understanding took root in his eyes, and I could feel the shifting currents of empathy begin to weave their way through the void that had opened between us. But before he could respond, the tension in the room morphed again, one that grew heavy, charged with unsaid words aligning the edges of a monumental confrontation. Just as I thought we might bridge the chasm between us, a strange sound pierced through the air, a buzzing phone on the dining table, sudden and disruptive, the unexpected intrusion as intrusive as a cold gust blowing through an open window. My husband reached for his phone, his expression shifting to sharp concern as he read the screen. My heart sank at the look that flickered over his features before quickly shifting to something unreadable, something veiled by shadows of secrecy I could not begin to fathom. "I need to take this," he said shortly, rising abruptly from the table, concern still written all over his features, but there was a winner or loser in our confrontation. The emotion between us had shifted so drastically in that one moment. I felt like I was in freefall, the raw honesty flickering between us extinguished as fast as it flared. My heart raced, panic clawing at my insides welling anew as my husband stepped away, leaving me alone, trapped in a living room that had suddenly morphed into an unsettling reminder of what fragile binds held us together. I turned towards my son, who still sat frozen in his chair, confusion swirling in his innocent eyes. The spaghetti remained untouched, the warmth of our earlier laughter snatched away, and the aftermath of my confession hung dangerously in the balance, like the unresolved murmurs echoing through a darkened room full of unspoken grievances. I felt my chest tighten, and for the flickering moment that threaded behind my husband's hurried departure, I recognized despair amidst him, a betrayal lacing the air that had become fraught with unexamined truths and unturned stones. The absence of his presence intensified the tension, leaving a sense of foreboding blossoming in the corners of the dining room like a slow crawl of rising anxiety. I had revealed my pain, my grief surrounding the loss of familial connections, and suddenly it felt like an open wound that would not cease to bleed. Alone with my son, with the weight of the unresolved conflict lingering, I knew this would not be the end of our conversations. With my heart pounding and a twisting sense of self filled with vengeance fueled by the repression I had endured, I resolved within myself that I would not let this moment be forgotten. I knew I could not bury my feelings any longer. This would become the beginning of my journey, one that would peel back the layers of raw truth that had long lain dormant. The kitchen carried a silence that felt unbearably heavy, yet my spirit surged with a newfound conviction. What I did not realize then was that this confrontation with my husband would become a catalyst for a truth long buried, a revelation that would unearth additional injustices and buried betrayals I had been avoiding all along. But for that night, with the air shifting like an unheeded warning, all I could do was wait, the suspense hanging thick and unresolved, a twist lingering in the depths of what remained unspoken, hanging in the air like a promise of something crucial that would not remain hidden for long. The day we said goodbye to my beloved husband felt surreal, like watching a sad movie I could not exit. It had started as any other morning, filled with confusing undertones, the scent of fresh flowers and the soft rustling of paper as relatives shuffled through old photographs. The dimly lit living room was a tapestry of memories, each snapshot whispering secrets of happier times. Yet today was different. Today was heavy with grief, thickened by the knowledge that I was to bury the man I had shared my life with, a connection I thought unbreakable. My son took my hands in his. The warmth of his touch ignited a flicker of hope amidst the suffocating darkness that surrounded me. I could see the pain in his eyes, a reflection of my own, and when he looked me squarely in the eye, my heart sank. "Promise me you will be strong, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion, cracking like a fragile vase. I nodded, my throat constricted, trying to muster the strength I had told myself I needed, while inside I felt as if I were crumbling into a million pieces. Trying to keep my voice steady, I managed a whisper of assurance, but truthfully my spirit felt like it was ready to shatter at any moment. The walls of our home seemed to close in on me, the dim light flickering like the hope I was desperately holding onto. And then he leaned closer, lowering his voice, creating a cocoon of intimacy amidst the chaos. "There is something I need to tell you." Panic seized my heart, racing like a runaway train. My mind raced through what could possibly be worse than the gut-wrenching loss of my husband. My breaths quickened and shallow, the reality of our grief began to blend with dread. "Dad wasn't the man you thought he was," he continued, each word slicing through my heart like glass, sending icy tendrils of fear up my spine. My pulse quickened, yet it felt like everything around us slowed to a crawl, the world becoming a blurry backdrop to the explosive revelation shattering my fragile reality. He hesitated, searching my eyes for something, understanding, compassion. He had debts, and he was involved in something illegal. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog that refused to lift. My breath caught in my throat, a searing pain lurching through me as if I had been viciously punched in the gut. I could feel my heart racing, the pounding in my ears drowning out the soft murmurs of family members nearby, who seemed to fade away as his confession echoed in my ears. A devastating refrain that left us both in a silence that shattered my already fragile heart. The vibrant colors of love and memory drained away, leaving only a stark gray in this moment that I wished could have been different. I desperately wanted to deny it, to cling to the image of my husband as the devoted man he appeared to be. But this was not the time for denial. This was a moment of brutal honesty, and I stood frozen, grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. My mind raced to recall anything, any hint that would have prepared me for this revelation. The family dinners filled with laughter, the reassuring kisses on my forehead before bed, the way he would play with our children, all seemed tainted by this dark truth. "What do you mean, illegal?" I stammered, my own voice sounding foreign, distant even. I searched my son's face for the comforting certainty that had always been there before, anything to anchor me. What kind of debts? What was he involved in? I could see the conflict swirling beneath my son's surface as he struggled with the weight of what he had just revealed. His eyes, once so full of unwavering faith in our family, now shone with fear and confusion. "I found some papers, Mom, really bad stuff. He was mixed up with people I should not even mention." The tremor in his voice caused a fresh wave of panic to crash over me. My soul felt heavy, weighed down by betrayal and disbelief. "What are you talking about? Who was he involved with?" My voice quivered, caught somewhere between anger and desperation. My body trembled as my mind reeled, searching for a way to wrap itself around this painful truth, something palpable to grasp in the chaos. I do not know. I think he was trying to protect us. Maybe he thought he could hide it forever. He hesitated a moment as if debating whether to share what he knew, and I could see it tearing him apart. But he was scared, Mom. I think he had made a deal with people who do bad things. I overheard him speaking late at night and he sounded terrified. My chest tightened as I processed his words, gasping for air as if there was a weight pressing down on me. In my mind's eye, I replayed those late-night conversations, the shadowed secrets he kept, passing them off as just work stress. The euphoric moments of love and laughter now felt like cruel jokes played on a woman too naive to see the truth behind the facade. Why didn't you tell me sooner? The question slipped past my lips like poison, leaving a bitter taste in my heart. I thought you needed time, Mom. I did not want to break you when you were already so vulnerable. His words struck me like a slap across my face. Guilt and shame rippled through my body, mingled with the heartache of betrayal. Had I really been so engulfed in my own grief that I could not see the fragility of everything around me? I cursed the heavens for this new layer of treachery. Everything felt unjust and cruel, and it made me feel so small. Do you understand what this means? I whispered, my heart racing with fear of the unknown, the future now shrouded in shadows I could not comprehend. What are we supposed to do now? My son did not respond immediately. Instead, he wrung his hands together, eyes searching my face for reassurance I did not know I could give him. I do not know, but we need to find out more. We have to protect ourselves. I turned to face the wall, feeling its familiar texture beneath my fingertips as if it could offer me some consolation. But nothing offered comfort, only suffocating darkness. My mind raced with the implications, the connections that I knew would lead to deeper trouble. Protect ourselves. The weight of his words sat heavily in my chest, each syllable thrusting me deeper into despair. Could I truly protect my son from the labyrinth of danger that this revelation had unveiled? My thoughts turned, spiraling towards anger directed at the man I had adored, the husband who had promised to guard our family. Emotions collided fiercely within me, betrayal, despair, and a yearning for revenge against the secrets that he had ensnared us with. This is all so unfair, I finally uttered, my voice cracking under the weight of it all. He hid this from us. He thought he could keep us safe. I turned back to meet my son's eyes, which were glistening with unshed tears, angered by his inability to find the right words. He was lying to us. Everything we built our lives on was built on lies. I felt the words explode out of my mouth, raw and unfiltered, as if they were going to rip from my throat whether I wanted them to or not. I feel so betrayed, I admitted, hatred surging forth for the man I had once loved beyond measure. How could he do this to us? The slightest hint of guilt flickered across my son's face, piercing through my anguish. Mom, he probably thought he could fix it. I shook my head, unable to comprehend his reasoning. There is no fixing this. We are living in a nightmare and he is the architect of it all. Inside me, the storm raged, threatening to tear my heart apart completely. I felt as if the ground beneath my feet was eroding, sending me tumbling into an abyss. I need to know everything, I asserted, forcing a sense of clarity onto the chaos that enveloped me. I cannot go to his funeral knowing we are at risk, knowing his lies have trapped us. My son nodded slowly, and I could see that his expression held a fierce resolve that mirrored my own tumultuous emotions. I will help you find out what we need to know. We cannot let his mistakes destroy us. We can turn this around. A strange sense of empowerment flooded through me, battling against the shadows. It was as though the weight was not only on my shoulders, but now we shared the burden together, searching for answers, a path through the tempest that threatened to swallow us whole. I grasped his hand tighter, feeling a flicker of strength, the first glimmer of defiance against the betrayal that had rocked our world. We will get through this, I promised, though uncertainty still gnawed at the edges of my mind. But in that moment, even amidst the chaos, I understood that what I felt, this sense of animosity, this fierce drive, would be crucial. The world had turned gray, but perhaps, just perhaps, it was a chance for me to take control back. My son's voice was firm as he repeated his earlier promise. I will help you. We cannot let his secrets bury us. And though the weight still sat heavily on my chest, as he squeezed my hand, I felt the darkness around it starting to flicker, as if the sorrow could be harnessed into something powerful. With those words, a strange determination brewed within me, as though I could usher a storm of change, a reckoning for the deception my husband had ensnared his family with. I would see his lies laid bare, and whatever fate awaited me would not come without a fight. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, the door suddenly swung open, casting a beam of harsh light across the room, interrupting our fragile moment. It seemed too bright, too loud for the intimate confession we had just shared, as the sudden intrusion startled us both. The atmosphere shifted, the tension thickening in an instant. Without thinking, I turned away from the doorway, desperate to shield that moment, that brewing intimacy, from the chaos that had violently intruded upon our grief. I felt my entire being freeze, uncertainty creeping back in, fear curling like a serpent around my heart. Again, we were in Hawaii, basking in the sun, and I felt young at heart, watching my granddaughter Mia play in the sand. She was building a castle, her little hands deftly shaping the grains into towers, and her laughter rang through the air like music. I could close my eyes and imagine the waves painting a soothing backdrop to the joyful symphony she created. The sun beamed down, warm against my skin, and in that moment I almost wished to hold on to time to freeze this perfect day. Just when I was about to help her elevate her castle to majestic heights, she paused, looking up at me with her bright eyes wide with excitement. "I can't believe you did that, Grandma," she exclaimed. Confused, an unexpected chill running down my spine, I hesitated, unsure of what she was referring to, my heart hammering in my chest. Her innocent words sent my mind racing. What did she know? For a brief moment, I thought of my life, my struggles as a daughter, my role as a mother, and now a grandmother. With those thoughts flickering in my mind, the haze of happy memories unraveled into something darker. There it was, the party from my youth, a wild night filled with reckless abandon, laughter, mischief, and indiscretions I had buried deeply, or so I thought. I felt my cheeks redden as that long-forgotten night rolled back into my consciousness like a wave crashing upon the shore. How could I, sitting here relishing in my granddaughter's innocent joy, have forgotten the secrets that turned to shadows beneath my skin? There were others like me that night, those who laughed and mocked and drank as if they were alive for the very first time. I would not have called it a mistake then. No, it felt liberating, exhilarating, living in the moment. But what about the cost? The betrayal of love and trust was a price I had failed to anticipate. As the memories flooded back, a familiar face emerged from my past. His grin was unmistakable, the cocky confidence that draped over him like a well-worn coat. A man from that elusive gathering long ago, slinking closer toward us with a smile that carried unspoken truths. "Mia," I began to say, my voice shaky as he approached. The words caught in my throat as my gaze darted to the innocent joy twinkling in her eyes, trusting and loving. I did not want to shatter her perception of me with the weight of my history. But the man continued, prying open my old wounds. He stood there as if waiting to fan the flames of my past into something far more scandalous, knowing how to stoke the embers with a mere smile. "Remember me?" he asked, a knowing grin stretching across his face. The laughter and joy of my granddaughter's laughter made way for an unexpected heat rising up from my chest, scorching me with embarrassment. Friends turned into foes, hidden truths began unraveling, and that frozen moment turned hopelessly confusing. I felt the world closing in around me as if we were suddenly thrust into an eerie silence, heavy and unbearable. Who was I to myself at that moment? I was gravel under the weight of 1,000 questions dragged from the murky depths of my past, confronting me at the most inopportune time. Mia, blissfully unaware, continued, "Grandma, was it true? Did you really sneak out to that party?" A gurgle of childish laughter escaped her lips, but I could feel my own laughter fading into the background, a discordant note in an otherwise sweet melody. Oh, how could I respond? Words swirled in my mind like a whirlwind, threatening to expose the truth I had hidden for so many years. The eyes of others nearby had turned our way, a hush falling over the beach as all attention gravitated toward us, and I realized my skin was prickling under their scrutiny. "Sweetheart, it was just a misunderstanding," I managed to say, but my voice cracked under the weight of not only the question but the memories that threatened to surface. I had thought I had buried that past, exiled it to a distant land where it could do no harm, but just like a tide that cannot be held back, it returned, rippling outward and pulling all my carefully constructed walls down with it. "Mia, let's decorate your castle, huh?" I proposed, trying to steer the conversation away from the landmines of my past, desperately hoping to deflect her curiosity. Silly and naive, I clung to the hope that childlike innocence could somehow keep the looming shadow of my concealed past at bay. But she tilted her head, her tiny brow furrowing as she considered my words. "Why did you do that if you promised Mommy you would not?" She pressed further, the innocent curiosity capturing the attention of even more bystanders, many of whom had started to listen intently, eyes widening with intrigue. Every rope of my control was being pulled taut, and I felt a sense of dread wash over me. What would I say? Would they believe me? How could I explain without shattering the image she had of me, without ruining the memory of this beautiful day? I could feel my heart racing, my pulse quickening as I tried to figure it out, emotions swirling within me like a tempest that threatened to engulf my very soul. My husband was not far away but was preoccupied, oblivious to the brewing storm meant to unravel our entire existence. As I could feel a well of tears rising just beneath the surface, I wanted to shout, to scream, to demand that everyone leave us be, to take the past and bury it. But here it was, laid bare for all to see, and I was standing alone, trembling under judgmental gazes. "I did not mean for it to happen," I stammered, my voice shaky and trembling. "You know, young people sometimes do things they regret." Regret. The word tasted bitter on my tongue like the remnants of cheap wine I had foolishly indulged in back then. I wanted nothing more than to wrap my arms around my granddaughter to shield her from any knowledge of the truth. But the man smiled wider now, as though my anguish was fuel for his unquenchable thirst for unveiling my secrets. Oh, come on now, let's not sugarcoat it. She was the life of the party. He called out, a taunting tone threading through his words, each syllable sharp enough to cut. I could not take it anymore, the walls were closing in, my cheeks burning from the rush of humiliation. I felt like a porcelain doll that was tumbling from a high shelf, shattering against jagged rocks below, unable to piece myself together as I lay in fragments. Stop it! I burst out, the words escaping my mouth before I fully realized the gravity of what I was saying. A wave of silence mimicked the ocean's calm, all eyes now boring into me, and my husband's head whipped around with an expression of confusion mixed with concern, instantly on alert, foreboding shadows cast over his features. Mia, my husband said gently, kneeling by her side, let us focus on finishing that castle. Why do we not add some shells to make it beautiful? He was trying to divert the attention, and I breathed in deeply, seeking comfort from his presence. The love in his eyes was a balm, but underneath it I could sense the disappointment that simmered there, a reflection of unspoken words we dared not voice aloud. But that man laughed harder, as if the two of us before him were foolish children desperate to outrun the shadows of the past. You should embrace who you were, who knows, maybe there is more to come, he said, his voice rich with mockery. Mia's innocent eyes shifted back to mine, searching for answers. But Grandma, if you did all this stuff at a party, does that mean you're bad? The innocent question bore a weight difficult to grasp, and I felt like I was teetering on the edge of a cliff, the wind trying to push me off into oblivion. No, sweetheart, I made mistakes when I was young. Mistakes which taught me valuable lessons. I'm not proud of everything I did, but I learned and grew from them, I replied, hoping to shield her from the harsh realities of who I had once been. But my voice quivered, betraying the storm that brewed within my heart. Oh, look at the time, my husband interjected, trying to salvage the moment. Mia, how about we collect some more shells and look for little crabs? But my heart was racing too fast, and all of this was suddenly overwhelming. A hot rush of anger surged through me, and I turned back to the man who casually lounged there, reveling in his intrusion. Why are you here? I demanded, my voice stronger now, with grit beneath the vulnerability. Why must you bring that night to the surface? He continued, smiling, but his eyes danced with mischief. Because, dear lady, some truths refuse to be buried and secrets swim to the forefront at the most unexpected times. It is called karma. The weight of his words struck me deeply like a heavy anchor, dragging me down as I wrestled with my conscience. Mia watched, uncertainty clouding her expression. I could feel my chest tightening, struggling to breathe against the burden of my past unjustly surfacing. As others began to whisper among themselves, glancing at my husband, confusion growing in their eyes, my world spun out of control. My heart raced, thundering against my ribs as the man took a step closer, more threatening than comforting, as he leaned in and whispered in my ear, "You thought you could forget, but I will not let you." With that, he turned away, leaving me standing there with my granddaughter's lively laughter echoing faintly against the backdrop of my deepest regrets, a distorted harmony that threatened to ruin everything I had built since that fateful day. The world around me began to fade, but I could not shake the image of him smirking, like a puppet master pulling the strings of my heart, his shadow lingering long after he had vanished. I felt lost and broken as I grasped my granddaughter's hand, desperate to anchor myself, the weight of my past crashing in like a storm, relentless and unforgiving. Mia, let us finish your beautiful castle, shall we? I said, forcing a smile despite the turmoil roiling within. But as I looked into her eyes, I sensed that something shifted, a depth of understanding creeping in. Nothing would ever truly be the same again. As we sat on the sand, constructing the fragile structure, a storm was brewing within me, simmering with fierce indignation at the injustice that hung like a vital thread of my life, a thread unexpectedly tangled in the present. The world felt ready to shatter, and the secrets I wished to keep hidden were screaming to be unleashed. A reckoning was at the horizon, and I could almost taste the sweetness of revenge waiting just out of reach. I sat in that stark hospital room, the fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above me, piercing through the silence and contrasting deeply with the chaos in my heart. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air, mingling with the faint metallic odor of blood and injury, creating an overwhelming atmosphere of dread. My son had been admitted after a car accident, and that fear twisted my stomach into tight knots as I held his hand, praying for him to wake up. My fingers trembled, brushing against the thin cotton of his hospital gown, wishing to feel his warmth, wishing that this nightmare would just evaporate into thin air. The beeping of monitors and the shuffling of nurses outside my room felt like an echo of my own heartbeat, sharp, quick, frantic. I felt so hopeless, trapped in a limbo between prayer and despair, living each second as if it might be my last. When he finally stirred, I held my breath. My heart raced as he cracked his eyes open, those familiar lashes fluttering like fragile wings finally escaping their cage. I felt a surge of relief crashing over me like waves against the shore, but it quickly faded, dissipated by the gravity of the moment when he whispered hoarsely, "We need to talk, Mom." The sincerity in his voice unsettled me. It was too serious for the moment, too somber for a mere exchange of pleasantries. I nodded, my mind racing and a million thoughts colliding together as he leaned closer, the strain visible in his brow, the shadows darkening his face highlighted by the jarring light above us. My heart sank, fear seeping into the marrow of my bones as a shiver ran down my spine, an instinctual warning that this was no ordinary conversation. "You should know before anything happens," he began, pausing as if to gather strength for what was to come. I grasped his fingers tighter, as if my grip could anchor him to the world we shared, my heart thundering in my chest, a frantic pulse of dread. "I'm not the son you think I am." Each word fell from his lips like heavy stones plummeting into an abyss where my sanity seemed to tumble alongside them. "I mean, I didn't grow up with my real family." As he uttered those devastating words, the room around me blurred. It felt as if time had frozen, the beeping of the monitor slowed to a heartbeat, each sound lingering painfully in my mind. My heart stopped altogether for a moment. Memories flashed rapidly through my mind like a warped slideshow of a life I thought I understood. Images of birthday parties, school plays, and first steps danced mockingly across the screen of my thoughts. I was flooded with an overwhelming sense of betrayal that wrapped itself around my chest like a snake, squeezing tighter and tighter. I gasped for breath, feeling each inhale turn to ash in my mouth, the truth of my son's words hitting me hard like a wrecking ball crashing through the delicate structure of my extraordinary life, the life I had built for us as a beautiful collage of love and nurturing. His face, once the embodiment of warmth and familiarity, was now marred with shadows of secrets I could no longer ignore. "What are you talking about?" I whispered, trying to comprehend, trying to hold on to sanity, but it slipped through my fingers like grains of sand. "What do you mean you did not grow up with your real family?" The anguish woven through my voice felt like nails scraping against the surface of something deeply wrong. I wanted to scream, to shake him desperately until the truth unfolded before me, but I also felt layers of confusion constricting my every thought. "I was adopted," he continued, the revelation pouring out of him like a torrential rainstorm. Each word was laced with a pain I could feel in my own chest. "I thought I was just like you, but I'm not. My biological family," his voice cracked, a break that tempered the gravity of his admission. "They have been trying to find me. They want me back." The enormity of his confession cast a shadow over the bright memories of love I had always encased in my mind, and I felt that wall of sweetness crumble, leaving only a raw void of disbelief where love had once thrived. My chest tightened, aching as if the very air I breathed was newly contaminated. "No," I implored, feeling the hot sting of tears threaten to spill from my eyes. "That cannot be true. You are my son. You have always been my son." My voice trembled, a desperate plea against the reality sitting so heavily in the air between us. Those shared moments, the laughter at silly jokes, the warmth of hugs that lingered longer than necessary sparked memories that felt tainted by a storm of emotions suddenly crashing down around me. What had I missed? What had been hidden from me so cleverly that I could not even fathom it? "I did not want to tell you this. I wanted to protect you from the pain." "From the truth," he said, his voice tinged with heavy regret while I fought to keep my composure, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes as the hospital room began to dissolve into a haze. The overwhelming need to grab him, to hold him tight and never let go, surged within me. My heart longed to scream, to shake him until the truth turned into something less malign, something I could contain and live with. But instead, I felt immobilized, an anchor against the gale of emotions battling for space in my mind. "How could you keep this from me? Why would you ever hide something so important?" I demanded, my voice rising, laced with anger but quivering with underlying fear. How could he perceive my love for him as something so fragile, something that could be shattered with a mere confession? "You are my son, you were always my son. How could you doubt that?" My hands were shaking, my voice struggling to contain the tidal wave of panic and hurt brewing inside me. "You are my mother, you have always been my mom," he assured me, an overwhelming sincerity in his eyes. But as I stared into them, I could see the storm clouding his heart, the secrets that had spilled over now framing the truth in a light too harsh for me to bear. "But this is something bigger than us. I need to find them. I need to know who I really am." The sounds around us morphed into a white noise, the world outside the sterile bubble fading further away even as my reality crumbled in on itself. My mind raced, grappling with the reality that the essence of my son, the boy I had cradled and nurtured, was intertwined with a history that was utterly foreign to me. What if he walked away from me, from my love? What if I had been nothing more than a substitute, a facade masking the truth that crackled under the surface? Each thought threatened to shatter the fragile core of my being, leaving me breathless and empty. I could see the resolve washing over him like a wave crashing on a shore, a determination that I had never sensed before. It was terrifying, the flicker of strength behind his eyes, a shadow of defiance awakening where I had only seen the softness of the son I loved dearly. I do not want to lose you, I admitted, my voice cracking under the weight of raw emotion I could no longer suppress. I could never lose you. The room fell into silence, a void heavy with untold words hanging in the air between us. I felt my heart race farther away from the warmth of my son's presence, a barrier slowly building as layers of unshakable truth accumulated between us. I watched as he struggled with his own conflicting emotions, tears welling in the corners of his eyes that mirrored my own growing anguish. Just when I thought I had grasped the entirety of this shocking truth, he leaned in even closer, a faint whisper barely breaking the silence. I think I want to meet them. Those words cut through me, slicing into my very soul as they settled between us like a painful wound, raw and unhealed. The world spun around me, the chaos of my emotions swirling into a tempest I was powerless to control. I felt my chest tighten further, the weight of his choice pressing down on me, suffocating me beneath its enormity. The need to protect him, to shield him from the chaos of the world outside, grappled against the instinct to set him free, to let him discover the truth he craved. As the reality of his confession echoed in my ears, I knew I was standing at the precipice of something I could not understand, something that might tear us apart irreparably. My breath hitched in my throat, and I felt the room closing in around me, collapsing under the unbearable weight of emotions that could no longer remain unspoken. Gone were the ordinary conversations about school, friends, or the mundane moments that defined our lives. In its place was an immensity that suffocated even the brightest flickers of hope. "This is too much," I barely whispered, leaning back against the cold, hard edge of the hospital bed, my fingers slipping from his as a sudden chill swept through the room. The silence was deafening, us trapped together in a liminal space where the boundaries of love and betrayal began to blur, where my heart screamed for him to stay, yet the universe seemed intent on pulling him away. I had always known the fragility of life, but nothing could prepare me for the pain of relinquishing my son, my heart, to a past I was not a part of. Just then, a sudden commotion from outside, the crash of a door slamming, voices rising in alarm, pulled my attention momentarily away from the abyss of despair we stared into. The tension that had knitted itself around us ebbed as the noise erupted through the sterile walls of the hospital room, echoing my own rising hysteria. But that moment was fleeting as my son turned to look at me, the uncertainty in his eyes sharper than ever. And in that instant, I knew that this was only the beginning. I felt as if I had been thrust into a whirlwind of emotions, torn between the love that had filled the sacred spaces of our lives together and the gut-wrenching reality of what he was saying, a reality that threatened to tear apart our very fabric. I did not know if I could hold on to this fragile connection, or whether I would need to let him go completely to allow him the freedom to explore who he was destined to be. The moments of laughter and joy blurred, overshadowed by this profound revelation that hurt more than any physical pain I had ever experienced. As a new wave of fear and sadness washed over me, I realized I was slowly transforming. I felt a burning desire to protect my family, but also an inkling of anger. Betrayal brewed beneath the surface of my emotions, the sharp edges of abandonment beginning to take form in my heart. I would not be cut off like this. I would not be denied my son, even if his truth was far from what I had always believed. The door burst open at that moment, and a flurry of activity joined the chaos swirling around us. But in that instant, I was no longer just an emotional victim. My heart might be bruised, but it was also emboldened by the strength to fight for my family. Above all, there would be no more holding back, no more silencing my truth. I would face whatever was coming next, and I felt my resolve hardening like a fire igniting deep within. I would uncover the roots of these secrets, would not shy away from the truth waiting at the end of this unforeseen path. My son may have been lost in a labyrinth of the past, but I would fight to keep him here, to confront whatever awaited us together. As a new resolve began to churn within me, I sensed that nothing would remain the same again. Our journey had only just begun.